Afternoon, everyone. This is John from whatifi, and in this fictional example, I'm going to showcase how a VFX studio is planning for the next season of Godzilla. They're getting a chance to bid on 3 different episodes and are trying to figure out whether they have the staff, timing, revenue, and capacity to take on this work, and whether it's going to be profitable. If you're not familiar with whatifi is a low-code connect-the-dots type of environment for rapidly building financial models and what-if scenarios, and we give you the ability to model out multiple what-if scenarios all in real time to quickly decide how to make your big business decisions and the ramifications of those decisions. If you're following along on YouTube, you can click on the comments down below there to find a direct link to this scenario, and you can open it on desktop. If you're in the application, you can use this video as a guide on how to model your own scenario building out something similar. So let's kind of dig in. I believe a good financial model tells a story, and here we're telling the story of 3 episodes that we're bidding, our current staff employees, our current contract employees, 3 different episodes, and then trying to determine what happens if everything goes according to plan, or what happens if some of the episodes in 203 get pushed out by a couple of months and what are the ramifications. And then we're going to calculate our EBITDA, which is a fancy way of saying our profit, and also our profit percentages here to see what each scenario looks like. These are containers, and inside each of these containers we can expand those open to see a multitude of inside events there. So for example, we're calculating our income. I'm going to show you our contract event, which is another way of calculating income, and we're looking at resource projections that we're pulling directly from our bid to pull into here to measure out our needs versus wants for this kind of work. So let's look at our first event. It's the project event. This is a simple one where we're basically creating the individual projects, Godzilla 201, 202, and 203. And this creates a whole account structure behind the scenes for this project so we can track revenue and other sort of values. Our employee event can be used to model real employees or placeholder employees. For example, we have Sue, who is a senior compositor in Vancouver, her start date, no end date, and financial details. We can also have placeholders like general artists here. So for example, these are 4 employees that are working 40 hours a week in Montreal, also with a start date. And I have a whole list of those in here, and we can see them in different lenses. But for example, here are 6 different records or entities, all with different types of calculations. Then we also have some contractors. So you can see with the contractors, we have start dates and end dates, and each of these employees is of a type. So in visual effects, it's quite common to have roles like layout, animation, lighting, and compositing. This is very much a simplified example, but these are the 4 types of employees that we're tracking. So we can actually bounce out here very quickly, and we can take a look at our current employees. So if I look at all of our artists, this is our employee artist count, and we're able to use this particular view to see how many artists we have month over month over month here on staff and as contractors. At any particular stage, we can bypass an event, so I can take the contractors out. So now I'm just seeing my staff hires, or we can toggle that back on as well. Next on the stack is one of our projects. So inside Godzilla 201 in this container, we have an income event. In the income event, I'm saying that we have 2 bid packs. We bid the first block of work. We're saying it's $720,000. These are our start dates and our end dates, so our amortization period, and we're allocating all of that money to an income account here. I'm going to show you very quickly what an income account is. So much like traditional accounting packages, we have a full charts of accounts and ledgers here. And inside each of these buckets, we can maintain many, many, many different nested scenarios. You're inside my example scenario here right now, so some of these won't make sense for this particular use case here. But if I look at something like my main income, I can see Godzilla 201, 202, and 203. Likewise, we have the same sort of structure for employees. So I can look at all of my artists, layout, animators, lighters, and compositors, and I can even drill down into their experience levels at the same time here. Let's go back to our model. So in our model here, we have that income that's coming in, and now I have a resource event. This can be imported in from a spreadsheet or manually entered in. And here I'm saying for this particular body of work, I'm going to need 140 days worth of layout. It's going to start on this date and end on this date. And we give you the ability to apply a distribution. I think this is one of the secrets in our software there is that distribution, when you actually need the work, is not a matter of taking some bid days and evenly spreading them over a schedule. It's actually trying to weight those days based on when they're really going to get needed over that duration. Layout is one of those departments that is usually front-loaded, so you can get as much of that work prepped as possible for downstream departments. Whereas something like compositing, say we have 400 days of compositing, this particular work may instead be something that you want to backload, and the reality of most of those resources are going to be needed near the end of the schedule. So we've done that for every single one of these projects here in episodes. So now I'm able to bring up things like employees needed, and I can look at each of these particular shows, and I can see now how many employees I'm going to need to complete 201, or 202, and 203. And you start to get the shape and profile of a show here. And this gets interesting because now I can also compare this back against the actual artists that I have. And because of our nested structure, I can also bring up our employees needed as a top level account. So now I'm seeing the aggregate of those two. So now we can look at just our artists that we actually have and what we need, and we can see where we are currently overstaffed and where we're understaffed given the nature of this project. So this gets interesting now too, because now as we start to make some of our decisions, we can also look at some of the profitability of this particular scenario. So in our default scenario, all of these projects start and end when they're expected to. All of our artists are evenly distributed over time, and I can use an expression event. An expression event's very basic right now, but it allows you to take income, for example, and subtract your expenses, which is really default for an EBITDA calculation. With an EBITDA calculation, earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization, we can now see in this given scenario where we are underwater and where we are making money over the duration of this scenario with this one particular project. In a larger scenario, you would bring in multiple projects here and you'd be able to see those projects stack up against each other. We can also turn this into an EBITDA percentage as well, so we can see month over month what our EBITDA percentages are here for this given scenario. But in our world where one of these projects are pushing out, we'll actually see that our EBITDA is changing and spreading out over time. So let's look at that a little bit more detail and see if we can figure that out. In this other scenario, which is another unique path, and again, we can drill into every single one of these paths, right? In this unique scenario, we have a group event that is saying, I want to reach upstream and find this bid pack from episode 201 and this bid pack from episode 203, and I want to put them into a group called reshoots. And then what I want to do is I want to take a modifier. And a modifier says, for that group of events and entities that we picked, we want to take the income start date and we want to shift that by 3 months into the future. And that entire block of work will shift by 3 months. So now we're able to look at, for example, our income here. And if we bring this back out, I can see the two income profiles. One where we have income early in the show and one where that is getting pressed and delayed further out. And as a result, we can see some of the discrepancies on our employees needed versus our actual employees, and where we start to have some challenges in those two sort of business models. And this is an example of a simplified what-if scenario for production planning for a VFX vendor. Thanks.